Informative speech for communications course. Here's my crowd. I got 3 adults. Let's get going. I'll have them grab the camera and record. I'll sit over here and start off this speech. This speech is going to be about the student-professor relations. Okay? And here we go. Students can no longer have sexual relations with professors at universities across the United States. At least that's what Harvard University and many other universities have included in their policies. They've had an issue with students and teachers and other professors at the university having illicit relations, which led to favoritism in the class, and different students were getting favors in return for sexual activities. So once I read that, I decided to make this speech and inform everybody how we can improve these relations without them becoming anything inappropriate. Okay? So this speech is going to shed light on ways to improve and foster a healthy learning environment for both the professors and the students. The first thing I want to touch on is that professors really love students. Okay? Pay attention to the word student. You have to really embody the word student in order for you to be considered one. If you're coming to class and you're just sitting there and you're not paying attention, or you're on your cell phone, or you're talking to the person next to you, you're not really going to be considered a student. And teachers and professors, they take mental notes. So when they see you doing these things, they know in the back of their mind that you're not a serious student. So when you go up to make a request, they will only take you as seriously as you're taking their subject. So the first point I wanted to make is that if you want to be a real student, you have to change your attitude and become more studious, right? Study more, go to class, show up. Half the job is showing up to class. And when it comes to many of the issues in the classroom, there are some things that the professor is not going to discuss with you. You know, you need to reach out to the professor. So the next question would be, how should you approach your professor? Okay, you shouldn't be scared. The professor is there to serve you. So the first thing you need to accomplish is getting to the professor, speaking with them, and knowing what to say. Even if you have a very simple request, many students won't even ask because they're afraid the professor might think something, or they may say something to them. So if you want to improve and you want to be successful in the class, you need to go to them and you need to communicate regularly with your professor. And the second thing is you need to be able to get feedback. Okay, you need to know how well you're doing. If a professor puts 80 out of 100 on your exam, then how do you gauge that? How do you know what you did well on and what you did not do so well on? So this means you need to approach a professor after the exam, talk to them, and ask them, hey, I know I got an 80, but what can I improve on, or what did I do well, so I can at least know that I learned this thing the way it was supposed to be learned. Okay? So once you get past the step where you are looking for feedback, you need to understand what is the feedback that you received. Okay, if the professor tells you that you did well on this, you need to start doing more of, A, B, and C, then you need to start and work on those things. Once you act on the feedback that you get from the professor, only then can you become a better student, which will in turn improve the relations with your professor. Another thing about professor and student relations is email and social media communication. Email and social media communication. These days, a lot of students might have an issue with something, so what do? They go ahead and they email their professor 40 times in one day about the same exact subject. We need to understand our professors are not computers. They're not at their desk 24/7. For example, you might have an assignment due the next morning, so at midnight you're sending 100 emails to your professor. Well, your professor he's not awake at midnight. He has a life. He probably has a family. Midnight, very few people are awake. So when you're sending an email, you need to at least allow at least about 24 hours for a response. Your professor is not a robot. You need to understand that, and they can't always be around to answer your questions. And when you do email or you send a message to your professor, you watch your tone. You have to understand this person is not looking at you face to face. They don't know what you mean by things. So you need to be very professional when you speak to him. or her, and you need to watch the stuff you say to them. Because if you say something negative, not only will you not get a response, it's going to impact how the professor deals with you in the classroom. The last thing about the communication with the professor via email is that if they're taking an unusual amount of time to respond to you, then you should probably talk to another faculty member, try to get a response from them. But first, at least give them adequate time to respond. Once all of these things have happened, you've tried to communicate with the professor, you did well on that. At the end of every course, there's usually an evaluation that takes place. Okay? Many students, they just go through the evaluation, it's anonymous, they just want to get it over with, pass it in. But I think that a lot of people should take this way more seriously in order to improve the experience in the classroom, not only for yourself, but for those people who are going to come after you and take the same exact course, right? If you are serious about it and you really put down the stuff that you think the professor did really well, and you put down the stuff that you think that the professor needs to do more of, or if they're not doing their job correctly, if they're not teaching you the material as you're supposed to have been taught, then you need to communicate that to the faculty. Many schools actually take the time now to look at the papers, to read through them, to see the evaluations, and some actually act on the negative feedback they get from students, and they sit down the professors and they reprimand them for the things that they were doing. And you're paying for these courses. You're paying for the courses, so you need to have some sort of ownership. You're paying, and you need to, at the end of the day, see what you got for your money. If you're not learning anything, communicate that to the school, because this is, at the end of the day, coming out of your pocket. The last thing I want to say is that I want to reiterate the fact that if you are really serious about your education and you're serious about getting this profession that you're reaching out for, then the professor will have a better reason to serve you. They're going to be more excited to engage you in the classroom because you seem interested in it. So once we have the right approach to dealing with our professors and have an open discussion about what's working and what's not working with the professors, we can actually revolutionize the way we learn. It's crucial that we communicate with our educators and we actually give feedback that benefits not only you but the entire student body. To conclude, college is a time in our lives that we have many life-changing experiences, and that professors are really a part of that experience. It's a unique opportunity, and I hope you learned a few things.